there's still a question of China is a generation behind in terms of chip manufacturing. The US sanction on EUV and DUV machine exports to China. And the idea of the sanction is that the longer the sanction held, the further America will move ahead in the tech chain, and China will be further left behind. As America and TSMC they go to 3 nanometer, and China will be still stuck at 7 nanometer level. What do you say to that?
Yeah, so I think that's not reflective reality. So, recently Huawei came out with Mate 70 phone, and there's been a lot of testing and results have come out about the performance of the phone since. What we saw first of all is we could go through like several the major part about it. You know, one, the the chip itself, the main chip, what we call the system on chip itself for Kirin 9020 has seen significant improvement over um, 9000S, which came out last year, and 9010, which came out like earlier this year, was Pure 70. And it's kind of amazing actually because uh, we saw that Huawei through like improvement in the design process and improvement in the SMIC process itself. Basically, we've seen it close the gap, not seen widen the gap with the Qualcomm Snapdragon system on chips, and they've done this. Obviously the chip itself got a little bigger. It has more cache now. Uh, they now control the entire core design part of it. So the very large core, the large core, and the mini core, which are part of the chip, are all using native Huawei designs. And that's a big deal, right? Because you control all the IPs. They have permanent uh, ARM9 licenses, so you can't sanction Huawei away from using its own self-designed cores. And then if you look at the performance of the GPUs in terms of the CPU performance, um, the overall performance that it was tested on Geekbench, it was better than Snapdragon 8 Generation 1 Plus. It was getting closer to 8 Generation 2, which was probably came out like a year and a half ago. So in terms of the performance with the best, they're getting closer and they're not getting further apart. And is it possible that at a certain point, if the EUV doesn't come out, that there might be an issue in the gap in performance? Sure, but like I think we're gonna have to wait and see what's going to uh, actually happen in the future. A lot of these are just basically dreams and fantasies of people online, with no bearing on reality. Because based on reality, we're only seeing that Huawei has been getting, I would say, a very uh, competitive flagship phone in terms of like computation powers, in terms of the app response and smoothness, and in terms of like um, photography and communication. So in terms of the 5G speed or 5.5G speed at the moment, uh, Huawei has by far the best RF technology. So and that's purely using a domestic supply chain. So for the rest of the Chinese OEMs, the message is you can use a fully Chinese supply chain and still have a great product.
So has it been confirmed? Was there a recent tear down that confirmed that the latest Huawei chip used in the Huawei Mate 70 was 100% domestically produced in China?
I don't think it's it. I don't think there has been a report on it, and I also don't think it's going to be 100%. For example, the DRAMs, I think it's more likely they source one of the Korean ones through like third party or something like that, because at the moment CXMT doesn't want to be caught supplying DRAMs to Huawei phones, because they're still trying to expand their production and stuff like that. But I think basically DRAMs is like probably the last major one. The In terms of the NAND chips, which you use to store stuff into hard disk drives, no, solid disk drives, that shifted to YMTC for a pure 70. So yes, and in terms of all the analog chips, they're already using domestic ones.
I saw someone made a comment on Twitter that say if they had apply all these sanctions to kill Huawei back in 2018 when they arrested Meng Wanzhou, Huawei would have been in real trouble. But instead, what they did was by arresting Meng Wanzhou in December 2018, he alerted Huawei of the urgent need to indigenize their processes, and then they waited until October 2022, or was it 2020? 2022 to slap the chip sanction, and by which time Huawei had plenty of time to to prepare for the eventuality of the U.S. sanction against them. So now Huawei is a lot harder to kill than like 2018 if America had decided to go full on killing Huawei back then.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I think back a couple years ago, maybe last year, they were starting to, Huawei people were starting to say that 2025 is going to be like just some great year. And once you get to 2026, there's basically nothing to worry about. So I think there's a lot of stuff being worked on and being planned on in the background that we don't know exactly what those things are, but there's level of confidence inside China right now that is very striking in the tech sector. Not among some of the uh, um, I wouldn't just want to just call them pro-Western sympathizers, but like I would just say certain people who are not as knowledgeable in these areas who think that China still needs certain technologies. But amongst the tech sector, the feeling is that, you know, we'll get there, and it might take um, extra few months in some cases, you know, but it doesn't really matter. We'll get there, and that is quite prevalent inside people in Huawei from everything I can read.
This reminds me of Stephen Su, who you had done interview with. Stephen Su, the American physicist who recently traveled to China and met with the Chinese tech people over there. He said exactly the same thing. He said there's a quiet confidence among the Chinese tech people that they're quite confident that China will continue to progress ahead, unimpeded by the American sanction.
While I was in Beijing, I also met with some top venture capitalists and technologists. There's quiet confidence among all the people in China, whether it was academic scientists, technologists, investors, venture capitalists, business people, just quiet confidence that nothing the outside world, specifically the US, can do is really going to stop the rise of China. And in particular, a lot of conversation was about AI and the chip war. And there's a sense of quiet confidence here that China's going to get the AI training done that it needs to do. It's not going to fall way behind in the race for AGI or ASI. There are government national level plans in place to build the data centers, to produce domestically the chips necessary to run those data centers, to power those data centers, and to stay abreast of developments in AI and also in frontier chip manufacturing. Let's just say that there's quiet confidence here that, they may not fully catch up. They may not get their EUV machine for some number of years, but they're not really worried. And many people have said to me that the very stupid Biden, Jake Sullivan chip war against China has only helped Chinese companies. This is something I've discussed in other podcasts, that when the US cuts off access for Chinese companies to key products and technologies used in the semiconductor supply chain from US and say Dutch companies like ASML, Japanese companies as well, when the US starts to threaten that, it only causes a coalescence of effort here in China. It creates a necessary coordination of effort here that then lets the Chinese supply chain ecosystem for semiconductors advance very rapidly. And so it was a stupid policy by the Biden administration. And it was also based on a miscalibrated estimate of how fast we were going to get to AGI. They thought, oh, if we just kneecap the Chinese right now, since AGI is right around the corner, this will let America get to super AGI and the Chinese will be behind and then they'll be screwed. And it doesn't look like it's playing out that way. Quiet confidence and a sense of inevitability in that sector, but across all sectors here. No, people here are just confident that, like, oh, if there's some product that needs to be produced, batteries, photovoltaics, cars, robotics, factory automation, 5G, 6G, whatever it is, even leading edge CPUs, leading edge semiconductor nodes, there's just a quiet confidence that China's going to get there or is already there. And actually, in many of these things, they just don't feel like Westerners can compete. They just don't feel like if it's something that has to be made in a factory, it's eventually going to be made by Chinese companies, not by Western companies, that the Westerners just can't compete.
So
Yes, actually, I had a conversation with Steve recently about this offline, and we kind of just commented on how stupid and how silly it was uh, to impose the type of sanctions that they did because, you know, it's very clear to him when he went there that basically nobody in China is fearful of these things anymore. And so now it's just about to like get going from we're already like third innings or whatever. Now we're just about to like blow things away. And that's
this is
actually a scary sight for America, right?
I don't think that it's scary for them because most of the people who make those policy decisions in Washington, they understand very little about technology and they understand very little about manufacturing process. That's why you have like actual tech CEOs are yelling at them in Washington, say, what the hell are you doing? You are screwing with our future, and yet you have people like Gina Raimondo persisting in their policy and doubling down on the same disastrous policy that they have been pursuing. And I completely agree. Biden was probably hands down one of the worst American president in the recent history. He's in the sense that he was even worse than George W. Bush in terms of degrading American power worldwide by pursuing this really insane strategies, devised by people who have very little real knowledge. Okay, enough my rant. Back to you.
Yeah, I think Jake Sullivan will go down in history as one of the worst national security advisors in the history. And although in some way I would say it's not even, I can't even blame on them exclusively because this was a prevailing um, uh, hope from a lot of the China hawks in Congress. You can probably see what Mike Gallagher writes. His view is America hasn't been tough enough. I'm not really sure what else he thinks America can cut off. These people apparently doesn't really understand tech at all. But he's working for Andrew now, so he needs to keep this up to get Andrew more like defense contractors or something like that. So a lot of these people have their own motives, whether it's from who their lobbyists are or whatever, that's pushing them to voice certain opinions. Uh, but